Hello everybody. We're going to we're going to screen this panel today, and I'm going to walk you through the steps that I do whenever I'm rolling fabric in. I've got a couple different camera views going, time lapse, things like that, so you can see. I'll have to move the cameras around when I'm repositioning, but we're going to start. I always start in the top left corner. Now there's a couple of ways I've heard people do it. I usually take a very small piece of the flat spline and use it to hold the fabric up there while I'm trying to work across. Just a small piece on the opposite side whenever you line up the straight edge of the fabric. The other thing always too, this is a 95% carbon, so it has definite lines and a pattern in it. Make sure you're putting this up to match the lines on your shade if you're doing a shade next to it or something like that, because your orientation of your fabric needs to match your shade. So the other thing is this being 95% solar screen product, it's a little bit harder to roll in than a traditional bug screen like an 1814, which is what most screened-in porches are screened in these days for just bugs. This is a solar screen. I wanted to block the weather and some of the sun from coming in on this Catio that I'm building. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to also talk about painter's tape. And I've had some people that like doing that first. Now you don't want to leave painter's tape up for very long because it will leave things gooey. But if you want to use painter's tape, what I do is I find my straight edge. I would come down here on this end and put my painter's tape all the way across. Now make sure you didn't touch it with a sweaty hand or something, because then it won't stick. So as you can see, it's holding my straight edge up there. Now to start a solar screen fabric, this is why I don't like using painter's tape, but it's an easier way for some people. A very heavy fabric, so it's probably not going to hold real well real fast. Actually, what I'll do is I'll take a piece of spline and put up there like I normally do. And it doesn't matter what length of spline you're going to use for that. All you're wanting it to do is hold up the fabric while you're rolling the stuff into it. So in order to get it started, I'm going to push it down in there slightly just to get the fabric started. Now, like I said, this is only to hold it in place while you're rolling everything in. Trying to do this on camera is a little more difficult because I want everything to be right so you all can see it. Okay, now I've got that up there to hold it in place. You want to kind of keep your line straight, roughly, because as you get about part way down, you want to pull this, but you also want to make sure that you have enough fabric to catch the spline groove on both sides. So now what I'm going to do is, since I'm not having to hold the fabric up there, I'm going to start on this side, and you want to pre-roll. It's a very thick fabric. Now your spline needs to fit in closest to the window opening, meaning the inside where you're trying to cover and then as you push the roller down, it actually tucks the flat spline under the other groove, and that holds it in place. Now you have to be very specific in using the correct spline for solar screen. It is going to be a 285 or a 290. Some manufacturers just have it labeled a little differently, but that is, in the industry, some people call it pet spline. It's made for solar screen fabrics, tough screen, things like that, which are very thick vinyl coated polyester yarns, where the fiberglass needs a 305 or a 310 to hold that in, because it needs to be a little thicker. And then as you're pulling across, now I'm starting at the top. Now I'm sure there's going to be screen room people that are going to say, well, that's not the way I do it. I'm not saying there's a right way or a wrong way. This is the way I learned, because I had to learn on my own in the field. No one taught me. It was just a trial and error until I got it. Now solar screen fabrics are more of an art, rolling these in. It's not something you're going to learn overnight. So again, like I always say, do some on your own house first before you go out to a homeowner's or a family member's, before you go out and do it on a homeowner's house and give them a bad experience because you're taking so long, or you've got ripples or wrinkles or things like that. And then as you're going across, I mean, all you're doing, my lines are unlevel a little bit since the pattern. So we're gonna, and that's what's good about this, you haven't trimmed it yet. So since you haven't trimmed it, you can just pull the spline out and re-roll it right back in. Now if you're working with the normal black fabric or a dark bronze that just has black and brown lines, that's a little different because you're not so worried about the pattern. But this particular one has lines that go a certain way. Now what you can do is pull this spline out the other side that you use to hold it up. And all you're going to do is, again, re-roll slightly. As you can see, I'm holding it in place. And then all I'm doing is rolling it in afterwards. The pre-roll just helps get the fabric into the groove. Makes it easier for you to push the spline in as you're rolling across. What you want to do is, in the corners, is just trim the spline back slightly. You don't want to trim it real short, but all I'm going to do is turn it over and cut away from the panel so I don't accidentally slip and cut the panel. And then that little dimple or tip that's sticking out, you just pull it out slightly. Now looking at this, I think I'm going to have a pucker here. All I'm going to do is pull this front corner out a little bit and pull it up some. Just to make sure. Bandit! Dog. I got the line a little better. Now this spline stretches quite a bit. So in the winter months, whenever it starts getting cooler, now when I say cooler, I'm talking like below 50. These fabrics are very hard to roll in whenever it gets stiff in the winter. So if you're doing one like that, I lay the fabric out in the yard so the fabric gets warm. I might set the spline out in the sun also, so it all is warm, so it rolls in a little easier. Hopefully that's a little tip that you all learned. Now, what I do is I start at the top, and then I go to the bottom panel that goes across, and I pull it down nice and tight and roll it there, and then I start on one side, and then I start on the other, and I work my way down. I might go 6 inches this side, and then I'll go to the other side, come down about 6 inches to match, and then I might go 6 more inches and then come over here and do the same thing. 6, 6, 8, 12, however you want to do it. Just do a little bit at a time, so that way when you get down to the bottom corner, you'll see in that bottom corner that you might have some fingers or some puckers there, and it's easy to pull the spline out both corners to pull it down and be able to work those out in one corner instead of worrying about a whole bunch of fingers all over the place. Now this is a square panel. When you're doing the transoms above porches that are triangles, wagon wheels, crow's feet, I hear it called so many different things. Those are a lot more trickier because you don't have a flat surface at the top. So at that point, I usually start with a flat on this side, and then I go across the bottom slightly, and then start at the top and then work my way down and try and get all the fingers in that one little corner, because that corner is going to be easier to explain to the homeowner because of the triangle and the slope, that you might have one little pucker in that one corner that you're going to do your best to get out, but that's just the nature of the fabric when you're trying to lay it into a triangle corner. Hopefully that helps some. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep working on this panel. I'm going to leave the video and all that running so everybody can see how it goes together. I do have one of them that's a hyperlapse, kind of like a time lapse, so you'll see it working as I'm going. So I'm going to get working on this, and if you have any questions, leave questions in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as quick as I can. probably noticing that I'm touching it every once in a while to make sure, because I want it to be real tight, because if it's loose, when it whips, that's what tears them up a lot quicker. Now this is going to take longer to tear up when the wind's whipping against it than a bug screen will, but you want longevity. These fabrics will last a very, very long time when they're installed correctly and they're taken care of. A little bit of pucker in this bottom corner, so I just pulled the spline that went across out to get rid of that pucker, so then I could roll it in, and now it's nice and tight in that corner. Now in this video, I'm only going to really show the top panel and how to trim the fabric afterwards, and then I'll come back while it's running and do the bottom panel. But it's just, I wanted to instructional on the top first, so everybody can see everything. Now I'm going to have quite a few fingers in this corner that are going to be an issue whenever I roll it down. So what I'm going to do at this point is pull the bottom out slightly, so that way I can pull it tight both ways. And I'll roll the top this time, the side I mean, all the way down. So put the finger at the bottom, and then as I pull this down at the bottom and re-roll, to tuck that spline in, you'll see that that finger, you might have to zoom in on the video, you'll see that finger is going to almost go away. That spline a little long, so we'll tuck in that corner real well. It's a little tense in this corner because I've got all this fabric going both ways, two different angles, so it's causing an issue. Now, at this point, there's a couple of ways you can trim this. What a lot of people will do is they will lay the fabric over the spline and then just barely run down it, but you're going to have a little flap. I don't necessarily like that, but everybody is a little different the way they do it. So what I'm going to do is show you one way that I do it. Now, I always make sure, a lot of guys like to have a dull blade so they don't actually nick this. I actually lay the fabric over, set it down inside, right next to the spline, where it's nice and tight, and I go real slow. And as I go real slow, you'll see it comes loose, and then I put my finger underneath it to put a little tension, so then you don't have to push with the knife as hard, and it literally goes you just go real slow. Make sure that there's not a bubble in your fabric here, and if you lay your knife too far, you'll cut that out, and then you'll have to replace the panel. But just go real slow. You might have some burrs, little edges of the thread that's sticking out. That's just normal for screen-in porches. There's no right way or wrong way to get rid of those. Don't do what we do in the shade industry and interior, is take a lighter to it, because you could burn everything a little farther than you need to. spline came out slightly, but it's a nice clean cut there. Now if you want to do it the other way, like I was talking about, is literally you lay the fabric over, you put your knife right, just touching the spline slightly, and do the same thing. Just go down real slow. But you don't want to cut the spline. That's what you got to watch, because some people will go all the way and you cut the spline and then the spline falls out because it's not holding the fabric in. And once you cut this fabric, you can't, it's very, very hard to rescreen it into that panel because you don't have anything to pull when you're rolling it in. But just the same way with this one, and if you notice the spline starting to come out, grab your roller, what did I do with mine? And just roll it in. That spot might have been sticking out a little bit and I didn't get it all the way in, but if you don't now, when the wind blows against it, because it's a very dense fabric, it could pop it out. And be sure that you're using a flat spline when you're doing screened-in porches. I've had some guys that use round spline and they say it works great, and then they never call me back whenever I've heard that it blew out. Because round spline, you have to use a very, very, very big one, and even then it won't go under both ends of the flap that it needs to be able to hold it in. It's only going to fit in the groove, and then once the wind blows against it, it blows all the fabric, all the spline, everything out, and you got to redo the whole thing at your cost. I'm going to go ahead and trim the rest of the panel all the way around to make sure that it's nice and clean looking. Now once the sun hits this real good, it almost, some people say it melts the spline in and all that. It kind of does that, but it's not really. I mean, what it's doing is it's just stiffening it up, the spline, when it gets hot, and it stays in there, and then the fabric just adheres to the spline once it's in there. So if you have to go change a panel out, some people use flat blades, very small flat blade screwdriver. You might want to use pokers. So I used to go to Harbor Freight and buy those, right, the 4-pack. It's got pokers and all that. They're little orange handles. That is real good at getting underneath the poker. Get under the edge of the spline and just run it down, and it actually pulls the spline out, and then the fabric will come out with it. I think there was another video that I did showing a few steps on a screen-in porch where I was changing out 1814 fabric that had, after Hurricane Pearl had tore up. So it's just 1814, which is the traditional screen fabric to use in screen-in porches. If you get 7 or 8 years out of it, you're doing good. But once it starts getting silvery and you can touch it and your finger goes through it, you're way beyond the longevity of that fabric and you need to change it out. So, I had a friend of mine that had screened in his porch on the front of his trailer on his property, and that's what I did was I went through and changed all his panels out a little bit at a time when I had time to do it, and I used it for content. I'll see if I posted that one. If not, then I'll go ahead and add that to my other video after this one, just to show you some of the stuff on that one. And I have a whole bunch of pictures that walk through step by step of rolling fabric, how to clean it, and things like that, the channels. All right, there's the top panel. It's very tense right now, only because sunscreen products stretch, so it does have a little bit of bounce to it. But like I said, as the sun hits it, it's going to tighten it up some, and it won't bounce as much. And I saw a spline up here that's starting to pop out. I'm just going to use my knife to push it right back underneath. It's probably when I was trimming it. All right, now at this point, I've got the top panel done. I'm going to go ahead and start on the bottom panel, and I'll readjust my cameras and all that so you all can watch everything that I'm doing. And I might not be talking during it, but I'm going to, if you have any questions about anything you see in the video, please just ask and let me know what you want answered about how I'm doing things. The rolls of spline come in 1,000 feet on a roll. The one that I have here is a 285. I picked this one up from Town and Country Industries. It's one of the suppliers here locally in Houston that I usually buy a lot of my products from. Universal Screens, I know, sells this now. There's a whole bunch of metal suppliers in the United States that, you know, maybe in your region is easier to get stuff from. A couple of the suppliers that are out there is going to be Eastern Metal Supply, Four Seasons, American Building Products. Town and Country is more Eastern. So they're all at the Eastern Seaboard, a lot in Florida. They stop in Texas. I think Eastern Metal stops in Texas too. They're more the Eastern, but there's other suppliers that are all over. You just have to look in your area for a metal building or metal supplier that would sell the products here. So I use 2x2 patio because it has 2 spline groups, and then I also have a piece of receiving channel for this to slide into to hold it in place. Now I'm not going to trim the center section yet. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift it up slightly, and I'll trim that later because I want you to be able to see. I mean, it actually pulls that down as it's pushing the spline in there. And if you don't watch, you can pull the spline out of the one up above. Got a little too close, and so you can just pull it over slightly. You can pull it too far. Because right now it's easy to slide around because you don't have it all the way across, and it stretches, like I said. So all I do is pre-roll. Tuck this down in now. It's starting to pull the spline out of the top already, just to show you how strong it is. Now at this point, what I'll do is I'll show you one of the tricks that a lot of the guys will do is they actually will slice it right across the center. Now I've already started it, so I don't want to scratch the frame, but I just want to slightly trim across so it doesn't pull the spline out up above. So at this point, I just push that back in, and it's a little less tense. And all I'm going to do is roll this all the way across. Again, I need to trim it so it doesn't pull out the spline up above. Now please understand, this is all for educational purposes. I might have some screen guys that are watching me do this that want to chime in. Hey, by all means. I'm not saying that I'm an expert at this. I've been doing this a long time. I learn stuff regularly. So if anybody wants to chime in with their tips and tricks, hey, more power to you. It's just, I don't want people out in the field that are having to learn on their own because nobody's given them any instruction, where it's all about educating and helping some people. And even if it's in your own region, by all means, it's better to help somebody out that is maybe new at doing this than it is to badmouth them or what they're doing, because it makes for a good experience for everybody when everybody's helping everybody. So what I'm going to do now is pull it down tight, and I'm just going to go ahead and finish screening this panel. Try not to talk too much or have any disruptions, just to help show you some of the things. Okay, that's it right there. Everything is fully screened in, splined in. Sorry, I threw fabric in front of that camera. But yeah, no, everything's done. So the other thing to also think about is cleaning up your area, wiping everything down, making sure you leave a nice, clean project. So all of your homeowners recommend you on. Now I'm sure everybody's gonna ask, this is the spline roller that I like. It's big, it's nice, it's easy to get a grip on. I have tried all of them in the industry. I bought every one of them that I could find to try. I didn't like any of them. Doesn't mean that might not be right for you. I will post a link for this one later after I post this video, but I will post a link after it's uploaded. All right, everybody, thanks. Have a great day.